Despite having played a lot of 40k and going to events for the past year, I've never played a game with an actual serious army list. So I can't think of a better way to spend the final moments of 10th edition than learning to play the game properly using a well thought out, sensible list and having a real pre-prepared game plan that isn't just hope centurions kill stuff before I get tabled. Would this have been better to start doing a year ago instead of before a new edition comes out literally next week and changes absolutely everything? Yes. I have my sights set on the Warhammer 40k Grand Tournament at the UK Game Expo, and I want to make sure that I end 10th edition on a high note by finishing that event with at least a 50% win rate. It's an 8-game tournament, which I can only imagine is going to be an absolute nightmare both mentally and physically. Before we get stuck into the big one, we need to take my new army list for a practice run. And what better way to do that than at the Winchester GT? I went into this tournament with as many advantages as I could muster. A fresh new list with a reserved but still sensible amount of centurions, an actual battle plan based on my army so I don't have to just wing everything on the fly, and help from 40k coach and Dilf Finder General Toby Bennett. Surely with all this preparation, I can finally have at least a mildly respectable result. I even have scouts now. Scouts! I painted faces for this! Now, as much as I want to do well at my upcoming tournament, I don't care so much that I'm going to play some horrible meta lists like Blades of Ultramar. I'm sticking with my Raven Guard Bird Boys because they're cool and I find them fun to play. If I'm going to spend my entire weekend playing with my toy soldiers, I want to at least have a good time. And I'd rather go 0-5 on a list that I enjoy than 5-0 on a list that I hate playing. Also, I don't own 3 Defilers, and I probably never will. And even if this isn't the 18 Centurion Insanity Zone, I'm still not going to hyper-optimize here. There's going to be some things that you just cannot avoid. Sharn and Shrike are pretty much mandatory if you want to play Shadowmark Talon. And I have my 10 Vanguard veterans with Inferno pistols to go with Caven as part of the Shrike bomb. I still have my Judicia with the Infiltrate enhancement leading 6 Blade Guard to push forward and be a menace. And any Space Marine list without a Combi Lieutenant is basically just telling your opponent that you're throwing the game. I have 5 Intercessors for sticky objectives, 2 lots of 5 JPIs, and my 6 Devastated Centurions, which are standard staples for the Screaming Ravens. Now, normally this would be where 2 more lots of 6 Centurions would go, but instead of those, I've now got some units that will be able to do more than just walk 4 inches whilst my opponent wins the game. 2 lots of 5 Scouts. Yes, I spent literally the entirety of 10th edition without Scouts, which is one of the key units used in pretty much every single Space Marine list. And in 11th edition, they will no longer be able to scout and infiltrate at the same time, making them way less valuable. Good going, me. Scouts are here to buy me space, do actions, or block my enemy. They are cheap, disposable, but useful utility pieces that my game plan desperately needs. I then have a big squad of Inceptors with the Assault Bolters. 2 things about this unit. First, I guarantee that even though I script these videos and I'm reading it, I'm going to call these guys Incursors, or Infiltrators, or Invictors, or Intercessors, or Interceptors, or something, because Space Marines have far too many goddamn units that start IN. And secondly, let's talk about their weapon choice. Assault Bolters versus Plasma Exterminators. I went with Assault Bolters for 3 reasons. 1, I just think they're cooler. B, I have high AP, high strength, and high damage covered by my Devastating Centurions, so the Plasma would be a little bit redundant over having higher volume of shots with sustained hits, which is still pretty deadly, especially with the potential to use Stunning Fusillade to get these up to AP2. Yes, the same stratagem can get the Plasma up to AP4, but again, that can be done with my Centurions from much longer range. And the final reason is that I just fucking hate overcharging Plasma. Yes, this becomes less critical in 11th with the changes, but my god, in 10th, I hate overcharging Plasma. It always fucks me over. Also, whilst I'm in an angry mood, these fucking flight stands, oh my god, these are awful. At first I was like, I've heard they're bad, but these look okay. You know, there's an obvious place to clip them in and they kind of seem relatively stable. But if you so much as look at these wrong, they will instantly self-destruct. And once that part snaps, good fucking luck gluing them back together because now the pieces of plastic don't fit snugly. I lost 3 of these fuckers over the weekend. And before I calm down, hey, past Paul, you forgot that their weapons are assault, so you can advance and shoot with them if you want. You better bloody remember that for Birmingham, you absolute knobhead. Sorry, I almost lost my cool there. Let's talk about the piece de resistance of this list. 2 Invictor tactical Warsuits. They're relatively cheap, they're pretty fast, and they can do some real damage. For some reason, they have a strength 14 melee. Sure. And whilst they aren't exactly difficult to kill, they do require a little bit of effort from your opponent. These are units that I can either throw forward to get them in the way or put into a position that is awkward for my opponent to reach and will force them to bring something more valuable out to play. They're also OC4, meaning they can easily reinforce my hold on an objective. And as they have the Phobos keyword, they interact with a lot of my stratagems. They can advance and charge and be uppy-downied, both of them at the same time. But they can't be reactive move, that's only for infantry. And yes, I know they have no pilots. I want to do that thing where you kitbash the pilots climbing out of the Invictor like it's Titanfall. I just haven't had time yet. There's also a very convoluted reason that one is painted black and one is painted white, but if you want to know why, you'll have to watch the sponsor time. If you do not own a Mad Case 2.0, you will pay for your crimes. So if you want to avoid that terrible fate, you can by going to tabletopstronghold.com. Go right now and get yourself the best carry case that has ever been made. You can keep your minis of any size safe and secure using the power of magnets, with 35% off in the Independence Day sale. Not really sure what a 1996 film starring Will Smith has to do with anything, but whatever. And there's free shipping to the USA, Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, and most of the EU. So you have no excuses and must click the links down below to go to tabletopstronghold.com and get yourself a MagCase 2.0 right now. And thank you once again, Tabletop Stronghold, for sponsoring. Oh, and also the reason for the Invictor colours is this. Going into the Winchester GT, I was feeling pretty confident, but also a bit nervous. There were a lot of very seasoned players on the roster, and the Crab Rave is very much in full swing. But with my new army and game plan in mind, I figured I had a shot of doing pretty decently. Game 1 at these events is an important game. It's the freshest my mind and body is going to be all weekend, so I need to ensure that I make an impact and put my lessons into practice. And I think as long as I avoid one of those horrifying Defiler lists as one of the incredibly good players, everything is going to be okay. Game 1 was against James, who is a super nice guy. James is a writer for Tabletop Battles and is one of the top 50 players in the entire world. I am not. James has mostly been playing Necrons this edition, but today he's bringing out the Aspect Host Aeldari for one last ride. They triple Fire Prism, triple Wraithlord list, which feels sensible in a Defiler-riddled world. The mission is Terraform on the Sweeping Engagement deployment. Normally, during these videos, I'll show the deployment, say something like, we deployed fairly standardly, without explaining what that means, and then quickly move on to the more interesting moments, most of which are me getting my ass kicked. But deployment is one of the most impactful parts of the game, which can make or break the entire battle. So having a plan in your head of what each unit needs to do and where they need to start the game in order to do that is incredibly important. And I've never really thought about it. I just kind of throw my balls on the table and hope for the best. It's so important, in fact, that Toby and I had an entire coaching session just going through deployment. So going into this game, I had an understanding of what I should and should not be doing. With this list, I have 4 scouts and 4 infiltrate units. I have a lot of tricks. Granted, 2 units cover both of these, but still, I have a lot of things I can do at deployment to make my life easier. James has 2 Fire Prisms in reserve and his Azuman-led Dire Avengers in the Wave Serpent, and I just have my Inceptors in Deep Strike. I won the roll-off and chose to deploy first, putting down my scouts here just in front of this wall. If I go first, they're in a good position to go forward and move block, and if I go second, they can retreat into this ruin. James then mirrors with his rangers, stringing them out to ensure that they are blocking me from getting too close to the center with my other infiltrate units. Now, this map is fairly unique in that what you would normally consider your expansion objective is a little trickier to keep hold of. Generally speaking, and in 11th edition officially speaking, your expansion objective is the one closest to your deployment zone. If you look at this deployment mission combo in either the UKTC mission pack or the GW Tournament Companion, this objective is pretty well protected by terrain which you can stage in. However, on this map, those ruins are flipped. This objective here is actually the furthest from my deployment zone, but the rotation of this ruin means it's a lot safer than my objective, with the trade-off being that there is far less room to put models on. Without James having any more infiltrating units, I can be a bit more reserved with my deployments until I have more information, so I can deploy as best as I can to help facilitate my game plan. I save my Invictor Warsuits for last, as these are units that James can react to if I place them down too early. No scout, no infiltrate means I don't really have to be that worried about that.
Exactly.
It means I can just start with this. This is my, I'm going to run at you.
So only question with that is the Invictor is actually like, it's a tactical decision. It's a tactical choice. You're giving me information before you have to. So everyone knows that these intercessors are going to deploy at home. And because I don't have any infiltrate, you don't have to give me any information. So my drop is just going to immediately be cultists, sticky home, spread them out so that they can have their fun. Oh, he's fallen over.
Oh, fell over. That means he dies. Some of my units are no-brainers to place. My Devastated Centurions can go into this big ruin here so that they have a choice to either walk out and shoot or get picked up. And the Strike Bomb is here for a counterpunch for if James breaches through this ruin to try and reach my home. My JPIs are more interesting. They're a fast blob of 10 OC that I can put down to flip an objective and force my opponent to deal with them. It's not exactly difficult to deal with, but my plan is to keep prodding with units like Scouts and JPIs, drawing out the enemy units for my DevSense Strike Bomb or Inceptors to pick up. I want one to go towards this objective on the right where the Rangers are, and I place the other squad relatively centrally to go either towards the middle or the left-hand side. My second squad of Scouts drop just outside my deployment zone, close enough to this ruin that they're able to retreat back into it if I go second, but close enough to this objective if I go first. And the Commie Lieutenant is positioned in the center, again to either jump onto that objective for actions to force James's hand, or to retreat with the reactive move behind either of these ruins. The Blade Guard with the Judicia started in this ruin here, which is just outside my deployment zone and close enough to my Commie Lieutenant for heroic intervention if needed. And Sean went back here as he's fast enough to go anywhere he wants to. Saying that, in hindsight, I think Shan is a bit too far back in my deployment zone. I'm usually very reserved with Shan, and I worry about losing him early. But realistically, Shan could be much further forward, and probably wants to be more favoured towards the right side. But still, this is not a terrible position for him. And last but not least, the Invictor Warsuits come down, both of them on the line. If I go first, they can scout forward, then move and potentially advance and charge turn 1 into James's face. If I go second, both of them can retreat out of danger. Now, before we move on, I just want to highlight how much more influence I have on the game with this army. Oh my god, this is so awesome. I felt so powerful. I felt like I had some real control over the board. Compare this deployment to the last time I was at Winchester. Like, all of this is doing absolutely nothing for me turn 1. I still have JPIs that can jump in and harass on the 2 side objectives, but once they're gone, that is it. Also, looking back with my new knowledge I have from Toby's lessons and experiences using a real list, this deployment is fucking woeful. But this video is already going to be too goddamn long to make without me adding in extra stuff like fixing my past mistakes, because if you start down that path, oh boy have I made a lot of mistakes in my past. I just wanted to show the difference in deployments and how many more options I have and how much power I can wield. We roll off and James gets the first turn. He scouts his Warwalker forward to back up the Rangers, and I retreat my scouts as planned. I move one Invictor behind this ruin out of line of sight, but the other one I push forward, as in this position there isn't anything that can really draw a bead. James draws area denial and extend battle lines and spends his first turn just preparing. He moves his Rangers around, staying off the objective for if I get something like overwhelming force, and moves his Warwalker in to terraform it. In the center, James identifies that I can't really do anything to the avatar, so it just moves forward and stomps onto the center objective, which gives him points for small area denial as well as allowing him to terraform it. On my first turn, I draw Cleanse and Recover Assets, which are both decent turn 1 draws. I was still thinking about going for my original plan of charging the Invictors up the board, which would have potentially blocked the Wave Serpent with the Dire Avengers for a turn. But from this position, it felt like that would be throwing away some control. I also have a ton of action stuff to do, and points mean prizes. So instead, I shuffle my scouts further into this room for safety and move my Invictor to add more OC and perform Cleanse while the scouts to terraform. On the right side, the JPIs jump in to overload the objective with OC and terraform. And in the center, I do the same, jumping in my JPIs to get at least 3 of them on there to take control from the avatar. And my combat lieutenant also moves in so that 1 unit can do cleanse and 1 can terraform. Everything else just shuffles around a bit, but otherwise stays out of harm's way. This is a very unique position for me to be in. I hold all 3 objectives, all of them are terraformed, and I got 8 secondary points in the first turn. This is a very strange feeling. James is turn 2, and he draws Assassination and Defend Stronghold. Defend Stronghold is very easy, if not many points, but Assassinate is a lot trickier, as all of my characters are hidden and difficult to get to. Nevertheless, James begins to put his plans into motion, bringing down his reserved fire prisms. 1 goes forward and 1 goes behind. They are both safe, and the forward one next turn can easily move and start getting lines of sight down the board, allowing the other 2 to fire through it with the fire prism linked fire rule. The Rangers hunker down further into the ruin and start terraforming, whilst the Warwalker walks around to shoot the JPIs. In the center, the avatar, incensed by the audacity of my JPIs, begins re-terraforming the objective whilst the Wave Serpent moves into this ruin to allow the Dire Avengers to pop out, shoot all the JPIs, and then jump back into safety. The Warwalker alone probably doesn't pick up the JPIs, but James elects to Flicker Jump Lickus and the Warp Spiders right behind them, and very quickly cooks them alive. The Warp Spiders then charge into the scouts behind this wall, with Lickus ripping them apart by herself. At the end of the turn, I pick Shan up and put him into reserves. I probably should have seen that coming and moved my scouts further away. I know how fast Aeldari can be. Normally in this situation, alarms will start going off in my head and I start to panic. The Dire Avengers are going to be a massive problem, which I need to deal with. And now I have an extremely deadly foe in my deployment zone, ready to start tearing through my backfield. However, if there's one lesson that Toby drilled into my head, it's to not start playing reactively.
We're kind of going to run a dry run of a game, and a lot of that is going to be focused around that proactive decision making, and does that kind of still track, and making sure that if there is ever that moment that it kind of falls off the wayside, we get the bonk stick out.
I don't need to try and kill the Wave Serpent here. That isn't going to help me this turn. I've lost both squads of JPIs and a unit of scouts very early, however, so this is going to be an issue in trying to get some control back. Fortunately, my card draw helps dictate my plan for this turn. Extend battle lines and Assassination. Extend is done, and Assassination shouldn't be a problem either. I have a juicy Phoenix Lord right here, which is the perfect target for Receptors to drop down with Oath of Moment to clean up. Or at least, that's what I thought. You see, I didn't really think to check the profile of the warp spiders. They actually have a 3-up save, and Lickers has a 2-up save. I can't use stunning fusillade here, as I can't get the distance and also the angle to shoot, so that AP 1 with cover goes down to AP 0. But I do have the weight of fire. 18 shots hitting on 3s with rerolls and sustained hits too. Then wounding on 2s with twin linked. That should get enough shots through to kill the squad.
The numbers don't lie!
Lickers, however, with that 2-up save, is going to be a problem. I didn't realize at the time, but I've dangerously undercommitted here. I get through the warp spiders, but it takes up so many of my shots that there are only 5 saves left into Lickers' 2-up save. Lickers surviving is going to be rough. She's the lion's share of the damage from that small squad. I'll miss out on points for assassinate, and then Lickers can then tear through my Inceptors and into the rest of my backfield without resistance, especially because of where the rest of my units moved. The Centurions moved forward out of the ruin to get rid of the Warwalker. Getting rid of that leaves the objective quite exposed for later on, with only 5 rangers there. And it means that if the fire prison pokes around, the Centurions have a tasty target to go for, as the majority of the squad can likely survive 3 fire prisms. This also makes space for the Vanguard veterans to stage in that ruin. The Blade Guard moved forward just out of this ruin. I think I rolled an advance with them to see if they could reach the objectives, but it was really low, so I just kind of moved them a little bit. I wanted to poke out to both overwhelm the fire prison with potential targets and also block the movement of the Avatar if it wants to start moving around this way. But with the Blade Guard there, Lickers will now be completely safe to start absolutely ravaging me from behind. I really need to learn to start checking what I've written before I say it out loud. The big mistake here is I really should have double-checked the defensive profile of the unit. It's just such an unforced error, and... Wait, where did Lickers go? Apart from that, I didn't really do much else. I didn't try to do anything drastic here, and I had to give up some primary as James was now holding 3 objectives at the start of his turn 3. And he's positioned to start pushing through to shut me out of the middle and right sides of the battlefield. Overwhelming Force and Sabotage. 2 pretty easy objectives here. The Fire Prism moves down to poke its prism from behind this ruin, and between the 3 of them, blasts my Invictor off the map, as well as 2 Centurions. One of his Wraith Lords steps around to try and help deal with the Centurions, but unfortunately doesn't do enough damage. And once again, the Dire Avengers rear their ugly heads, jumping out of the Wave Serpent to destroy my Combi Lieutenant before fleeing again into their emotional support transport. The Avatar starts to stomp around the center ruin and runs into the Blade Guard. The Avatar doesn't really fear the Blade Guard, but I don't really need to kill it. I just need to delay it as long as possible. In its place, a Wraith Lord and a Warlock Skyrunner move over to ensure that they have something on the center objective that will require me to act to take it back. In response, I use an ability that I've never used before. I Rapid Ingress Shan. No, not Rapid Ingress. I use that all the time. It's goddamn amazing. What I mean is I use Shan's ability that allows him to Rapid Ingress for free. It also allows him to heroically intervene for free, but he doesn't have fights first. So I feel like if I did heroically intervene him, he'd just get punched to death. So it seems pointless, really. But hey, there might be a possible use for it somewhere. Shan rapidly ingresses just here behind this ruin. This is a surprise tool that will help us later. Unfortunately for James, an Invictor, my Combi Lieutenant, 2 Centurions, a single Inceptor, and a couple of Blade Guard were all that he could get this turn. That does give him 5 points for overwhelming force and decent board control, and while it sounds like a long list, it hasn't really done much to really cripple my army. On turn 3, I draw Marked for Death and Established Locus. Established Locus is, honestly, straight up not doable, so I redraw for Overwhelming Force. I mark the Rangers with Shan's rerollable charge and as my Gamma target for Marked for Death. I put Oath of Moment on the Visible Fire Prism. If I can get rid of it, that will really cause James some problems, as the other 2 are not in great places to find angles where they are. I move my Interceptors up to this fucking square to get their Assaulter Bolters in range, and Shan soars across to get a charge into the Rangers. The Vanguard veterans finally come out to play. With the first Wraith Lord able to be dealt with by the Centurions, my aim here was to get the Shrike Bomb into the other and try and block the Dire Avengers. Failing that, I can position in a way where if the Wave Serpent moves, I can make a reactive move. I also start to bring my other Invictor Warsuit out, looking to replace the destroyed one on that objective, and to be able to aim his Flamer at some extremely flammable Aeldari later on. The Intercessors, knowing that I have no more threats that are able to deep strike into my battlefield, advance forward to get enough onto the objective to claim the center, but as they advance, they cannot do Terraform. In the shooting phase, the Inceptors start by firing into the Fire Prism, and out of 15 shots, I get 23 hits. Yes, I rolled a lot of 6s. They then rolled extremely hot for the wound and managed to destroy the Fire Prism on their own. That allowed my Centurions to focus focus purely on the Wraith Lord. Shan makes his charge and instantly destroys the Rangers in a storm of claws and blood, taking the objective from James and, more importantly, stopping sabotage, which is honestly an extremely rare thing to do. Unfortunately, the Vanguard vets did not manage to make their charge, so whilst I had a decent turn 3 and prevented a lot of James's primary, on turn 4 he could jump out the Dire Avengers and decimate the Shrike Bomb, leaving just Shrike and a single Vanguard veteran. This one Vanguard veteran is going to be the cause of a heart attack later on in the game. However, instead of jumping them back into the Wave Serpent, James has got to get them over towards the left objective. He can't move them right now, but if he doesn't do anything about it, I'm going to be able to get right into that Wave Serpent next turn and completely deny him access, especially as he has no way of getting anything to the right side objective now that Shan has cleared it out. And the center objective also needs work doing as the intercessors are relatively safe thanks to the Blade Guard holding up the Avatar. On this turn, I took this picture of Shan. I don't think I need to explain what happened here. But the big play comes from his Warlock Skyrunner, which makes a massive advance roll to fling itself onto my home objective, which means that on my turn, I only hold one objective. And I need to clear this out before he terraforms it and gets 3 points, because once your home is terraformed, you cannot undo it. At the end of James's turn, I put Shrike into Deep Strike. Deep Strike? Sure. My turn 4, and I push forward with the Invictor Warsuit to light up the Dire Avengers, getting rid of enough to ensure that I will keep control of this objective going into round 5. The right side is clear, but still terraformed by James, and in the center, I can fully load my Centurions onto it to get control and terraform. I then drop down Shrike with the single Vanguard Veteran into my backline, just outside of 9 inches, and hey, just in case, I might as well shoot Shrike's pistol at the Warlock to see if I can avoid charging entirely, because relying on a 9-inch charge is not a good idea. Both shots miss, which usually what happens, but oh well, never mind. I guess I just gotta try and shot. This is just a straight up unforced error. And this is not a gotcha from James either. This has been a rule that I've been asking about all game. James had reminded me about this earlier in the game before some of my shooting, but at this point in battle round 4, I shouldn't have to be reminded. Gotchas are a whole topic that I'd get into, but let's move on. I'll make a video about that at some point. The main point here is James has been extremely fair, and this was my mistake. This does put the Warlock out of charge range, but fortunately not that far away from other stuff. There wasn't much movement James could do that would not then be in line of sight from either my scouts or centurions. I've thrown away some points here, but it's not something I can't fix in round 5. Either way, I could have bailed the charge and it had been exactly the same result. So maybe taking the shot was better because it would be hitting on 2s and winning on 3s. In the fight phase, the Blade Guard are finally bested by the Avatar. And so in James's turn 5, it can get into the intercessors and take back the center objective. He draws Marked for Death, which I kind of have to just elect stuff that he struggled to kill, or at least make it a little tougher. But even so, he does manage to get through the Invictor with the 5 prisms that have made their way over. And with the final Wraith Lord, he terraforms the center objective. This pesky Warlock also gets to terraform my home, which guarantees at least 1 extra point at the end of the game. I am left with 3 Centurions, 5 Scouts, and Shrike with a single Vanguard Veteran. And at this point, the score is 64 to 78. I cannot stop the center or my home terraform points. So realistically, James will end on at least 80 points. Therefore, I need 17 points to win with just 3 units. So my turn 5 card draw. Sabotage and secure no man's land. Not terrible. I can easily get secure, but I really need to swing points with the terraform action on the right side objective. So I elect to redraw Sabotage. I spend one of my 2 remaining command points, flip the card, and get Cull the Horde. Can't do that one. All right, next card. Storm, hostile, objective. Perfect. The scouts can use my final command point to advance and charge into this Skyrunner, but not shoot it. Not this time. I learned my lesson. So that gets me Storm Hostile Objective and 4 primary points. The Centurions need just a 1-inch advance to ensure that I can get 2 of them onto this objective to keep hold of it for a further 4 on primary and 2 for secure no man's land. Remember when I said that this single Vanguard Veteran would give me a heart attack? This is why. If this Vanguard Veteran had died, Shrike would be full health and not have to make a Battle Shock test. However, because of this single wild goose, the entire game now comes down to whether I can pass a Battle Shock. I cannot use Insane Bravery, as that only works in the command phase, and even if I could, I've already used all of my command points. I need Shrike to drop onto this objective for 4 points on the primary, 3 additional points on secure no man's land, and I can then terraform it for an additional 2-point swing. If I fail this Battle Shock, I will lose by 3 points. If I pass, I win by 7. I roll a 6. Couldn't have made it any bloody closer, could you, Shrine? I win 87-80 in one of the closest games I've ever played against an extremely formidable opponent. Apart from a couple of blunders, I think I played this game well. I stuck to my game plan. I didn't fall back on being reactive. I did what I needed to do and managed to narrowly pick up a victory. This game was a ton of fun. James was an excellent opponent, and getting that first victory really helped me with my confidence and momentum. But there is a problem. You see, playing this kind of list that allowed me to have options and a game plan instead of just goofing around with 18 of my favorite chonky lads meant that this single game of Warhammer has maybe used more brain power than what I'd normally use for an entire event. This is not an exaggeration or a joke or anything. I played more Warhammer in this game alone than the entirety of the South Coast Super Major. And just to really hammer that point home for you, the script for this one game is only this many words less than the entire 36 Centurion South Coast video. There was just so much going on, so much to think about, and so many impactful decisions and moves that recording this game has taken this long, and there's still 4 more games to go. Fortunately for you watching and for me having to make this video, the other 4 games, whilst very fun and relatively close, mostly, don't have to be dived into as deeply, as there are more specific events that shape the game rather than this first one, which was lots of small, intricate things accumulating over time. Now, before we move on, I want to make sure everyone is properly hydrated, as that was a lot. So make sure you have a drink, stand up, have a stretch, go outside, commit a petty crime, then come back inside, sit back down, watch this ad that YouTube will probably automatically place here because I'm going to pause for like half a second. And now lock in. Game 2 was against Conan, who was a super nice guy, bringing a no-nonsense Imperial Knights list in the countdown overachiever formation of 4 large and the rest small. No tricks, no shenanigans, just big robots running at you, which is basically the complete opposite of my 4 infiltrating, 4 scouting, uppy downy grade A bullshit. I always find Knights to be a tricky matchup, as it forces you to have to play differently to other armies.
Something that I picked up on when you were talking about the Knights game was the comment, Knights force you to play a different way. Why?
I think for me, it's especially when it's quite fast knights and not having that much stuff that can kill them, and the stuff that they have can kill my centurions very quickly. I feel like you have to play, I guess it's not so much differently. With a regular army, you can kind of go, okay, well, my JPIs, my Vanguard vets, my scouts, they can do some damage to some of the smaller, like, skirmishing units. They aren't doing that much tonight. And so if I throw the wrong thing in the wrong place, a knight is going to pick that up, and then they can stand on so many objectives and just be so big and annoying that I feel like I have to play more carefully around them. Because the game plan, thinking about it more, the game plan that I have is exactly the same. I feel like I play too carefully, because if I don't and I break the wrong move, they can just poke over a wall, massive distance, to just blow me away.
So yes, there is definitely an element to that. But did you notice that when you were talking about how you were planning, you were immediately going back to that kind of, how do I kill them? How do I deal with them? And it's that reactive, instead of going, actually, I'm just going to focus on this area to expand my game plan and make sure that I'm scoring my points. That's the difference still. And Knights are kind of one of those armies that it is very difficult to not become reactive against it. The thing that changes is how many resources are in a certain area, not your game plan, because you're still doing exactly your game plan. You just need to make sure, because there's not as many resources from them, you don't have to spread so thinly. So it's still focus on your game plan. It just means that your army can bunch up a little bit more. That takes reps to kind of get comfortable with that, because again, they are so quick that they can put that pressure on you. The stat check is real, and it's a bit like Catan, right? Sometimes if they just put 3 Catan in front of you, you freeze up. Well, how on earth do I kill 3 Catan in one turn? The answer is you probably don't need to. If you kill one of them, you'll then probably be able to deal with the other 2 over the course of the next 2 turns, and that will almost certainly be fine. Maybe they get a slightly bigger primary score. Oh no, I'm heartbroken. I'll still keep scoring my points, keeping the game close. Once that stat check is done and their lack of units starts really telling, you win that game.
We're playing Hidden Supplies on the Search and Destroy deployment. The interesting thing here is that Conan elects to deploy his Atropos towing onto this ruin in his deployment zone, which was a bit confusing, but actually was a really smart gambit. If he goes first, there's no real danger. But if I go first, then I can easily get my Centurions out into line of sight and they can destroy it. However, what happens if I do that? Well, I'd get the Atropos, but then the Centurions would just die, and I'd have nothing left to kill the remaining Knights, and I'd just get steamrolled. Whether he meant to or not, I can't look into his brain or anything, but this was Conan laying a trap for me. I did roll to go first, but I did not take the bait. My deployment went as pre-planned, although looking back and now with more experience, I can definitely see some errors here. The 2 lots of scouts in the list really makes me want to use them as my forward deploying objective pieces, but that leaves the Blade Guard a little bit lost for a role. So I normally end up deploying them centrally as something to counterpunch and as a fight's first deterrent. However, I think they would have been better served in this ruin near my expansion, and a unit of scouts should have been here instead in the central ruin. On my first turn, I put Oath of Moment and Sharn's rerolling charge onto the Atropos, then scouted and moved both my Invictors forward aggressively. Poor deployment meant I had to use JPIs to get area denial, which would have been an ideal use for scouts in the center instead of the Blade Guard. But otherwise, I just staged my units near my expansion. The Invictors plink a few wounds off the Atropos in shooting before both getting the charge. The problem here is I couldn't avoid the heroic intervention from Canis Rex, which meant that it's very likely that both Invictors will die this turn. That was kind of always the plan, to be fair. Tie up a knight and then die, but I was hoping that I'd maybe get at least one Invictor alive on Conan's turn. However, Invictors being absurdly strong in melee thanks to that strength 14 weapon they have for some goddamn reason, again, I don't know why, they managed to take the Atropos down to just 3 wounds remaining. And it's those 3 remaining wounds that keep me from properly pushing the momentum in this game. And I basically always had a knight with that very few wounds remaining that needed a bit extra in the next phase. The Atropos didn't do anything, but when I brought my Centurions out, I needed to fire 1 or 2 of them that couldn't see my main target to finish it off, which meant that my main target had a few wounds left that needed sorting out melee, which delayed me starting on Canis, which meant that my resources for dealing with knights were rapidly depleting, because there was always 1 extra knight on the field than I'd planned. In the end, I did manage to kill 3 big knights, but at the cost of basically my entire army. So when the Warden burst through this wall to charge at my home objective, I had nothing left to stop it. Also, Canis Rex exploded and killed a Centurion, 2 Blade Guard, 2 JPRs, and Nathan Sharn. 64 to 82 defeat. Game 3 was against Rob, who was a super nice guy. Rob was playing Warhorde Orks with some lesser seen units. A big block of Squighog boys and a Morkanaut. For some reason, whenever I play against Orks, my dice just decide they've had enough. This was also the last game of the day, and I was mentally drained. So I defaulted to my standard practice deployment to be able to get up to all the objectives and harass with JPIs. Unfortunately, this is Scorched Earth, where you only need to hold 1 or 2, and that includes your home objective. So trying to spread myself thin, especially against Orks, is a really bad idea. Especially as I'm going first, which on Scorched Earth is not great. I'm not one to blame the dice, except that one time where it was definitely the dice's fault. But I would be remiss not to mention that 6 Centurions flying into Squighog boys that were not in the war killed 1 Squighog boy. 1.
The numbers lie, and they spell disaster for you.
They were in cover, and Rob spiked hard on the armor saves and feel no pains. And the few shots I got through, I low-rolled the damage. I'd also moved my Shrike Bomb to finish them off, assuming that the Centurions would get most of the squad, if not all of it. But when that bounced, I kind of just had to proceed with the plan, and I lost most of the Vanguard vets on the clapback. But despite all of my poor luck here, this game was lost from deployment.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was one of those where, unfortunately, the dice do betray you a little bit.
However,
I do think there is an element where the game was lost before he actually took his turn, because Scorched Earth, to max out primary, you need to hold 2. So why were you holding 4?
51 to 97. Not a great game on my part, but still a fun one. After a much-needed sleep, I went into day 2 hoping to prove myself as not bad at stuff and come away with a positive win rate. But to do that, I need to pass one of my greatest challenges yet. Game 4 was against Ryan, who was a super nice guy. Ryan was playing Retaliation Cadre Tau. That made this my first and only game against Tau in 10th edition. This also means I have now played at least 1 game against every single faction in the game. Except Imperial agents, but they don't count. And that's no longer just me saying that, because they didn't even get a faction focus for 11th edition. As far as I know, outside of not being Montcar, this is a very standard trip-tied Tau list. I'm not going to talk about how bullshit the Twin Lance are, because even though that unit is a absolute goddamn nightmare, it wasn't as impactful as it could have been. But at this point, I think everyone and their mum has talked about the absolute state of this data sheet, so I'm not going to add anything new. We're playing Take and Hold on the Search and Destroy deployment. To talk about this game properly, we need to work backwards. This game was a very close defeat for me, 74 to 84. That's insanely clutch. It came down to just 10 points on the primary. I made a few mistakes overall, as I do most games, one of which was sending my Blade Guard into the middle to take back the center objective, as I've been doing for the past few games, before I then realized, wait, hang on, I've just put tanky fights first melee into the center against a pure shooting army. Stupid? Yes, but not the worst, as it didn't stop my momentum. No, I lost this game because of a single blundered movement phase. Battle round 4. I have the first turn. Ryan has 10 Crute in the middle with the Twin Lance off the objective looking to pounce. I have just successfully defended my expansion from stuff like Pathfinders. I have Shrike with 10 Vanguard veterans and 5 JPIs staged behind this ruin. My Invictor is holding the objective. I have Storm hostile objective and engage on all fronts. So I want that middle objective. I moved my Invictor Warsuit just off the objective to get line of sight on the Crute. I then sent over Shrike and the Vanguard veterans to deal with the rest. The Twin Lance overwatched and I lost 5 Vanguard veterans to Overwatch. Good start. I moved my JPIs over to hold the expansion objective, but I didn't do it very carefully. And unbeknownst to me, I basically just completely mispositioned them, so only 2 were on the objective. My inexperience, tiredness, worry about undercommitting to kill 10 Crute, and other such bullshit excuses has made me completely whiff this turn. And I'm so mad at myself for not just taking a step back to think about what I was doing. It's a classic case of something I do a lot, which is have a plan in my head of what I want to do, start the movement phase, and realize that the plan was terrible. As soon as we got to the shooting phase, I'd realized I'd fucked it. I moved my Invictor out to get a Flamer on the Crute. Why did I do that? Because if I kill any of them, it makes the charge harder. So I had to panic retarget into the Twin Lance to do a sum total of naff all. I charged Shrike and the remaining Vanguard veterans in and made extremely quick work of the Crute. Because, yeah, they're Crute. I really did not need to worry about not killing them. But in my head, I just had it that I would completely whiff. But I shouldn't have even had to worry about completely whiffing, because instead of sending Shrike and the 10 Vanguard veterans to die, I could have just sent my JPIs. I could have moved it into this ruin here, which would have been out of line of sight of the Twin Lance, and then charged from there, which also would have meant I wouldn't have had the threat of Overwatch. The only real worry would be if I whiffed the charge. But I could have whiffed the charge with the Vanguard veterans as well, so it wouldn't have really mattered either way. I then could have used the Strike Bomb to screen out anything getting onto my expansion. And again, because of their lone up, they would have been really safe. Instead, this blunder meant that Ryan could just throw 5 Vespers onto my expansion to out-OC me, and I had no command points left to do anything about it. Had I not moved my Invictor or not bugging up the JPI movements, I'd have had 14 OC on there going into my round 5. The reason I didn't have any command points left, I didn't move my Intercessors on my home objective behind this ruin, and so that gave Ryan a very easy charge from the Twin Lance. I had to use my final CP to try and reactive move to fix that mistake, but I rolled a 1, meaning that my turn 5, I scored 0 primary. Had I not blundered both of these moves, I would have had 10 on the primary in my turn, and this game would have been a tie. So it all comes down to this. Can I at least bring myself up to a 40% win rate on my first crack with a proper army? Let's find out in game 5 against Alex, who is a super nice guy. Alex is playing Rubricae Phalanx 1000 Tons with a whopping 30 Scarab Occult Terminators, all being led by Terminator Sorcerers. This was going to be an extremely tricky game. I know how insanely tough those Scarab Occults are, and I know how much damage they can kick out. So trying to get through 3 of those blocks is going to be a real struggle. We're playing Linchpin on the Dawn of War deployment. And for the first time all tournament, I finally decided to play more forward with my Blade Guard. I infiltrated them behind this terrain here. And thanks to this fucking square, I was safe from shooting from this angle here. Vanguard veterans staged behind them for a counterpunch potential or to get themselves towards the middle. And the rest of my army is there to scream because Alex has put one of his Scarab Occult bricks into Deep Strike. And that coming down into my backlines would be an absolute disaster. I put 1 set of scouts forward onto the left side just to ensure that any secondaries that might require that side of the board are accounted for. And also to potentially move block some of the rubrics that Alex has deployed here. Alex gives one of his Scarab Occult Terminator units infiltrate and stages them aggressively in the center ruin. And then this other one he places directly behind. Alex's plan is simple. Send a unit of Scarab Occults right into my face onto my home objective and then replace it with another one. Once I've dealt with the first one, oh look, do it again. Fortunately, I've deployed in such a way that makes that less ideal. And even with all the tricks, I don't think they can really get to my centurions. I also rolled to go first, which has allowed me to get ahead of that play. I drew March for Death. Great. And pull the Horde. Bring it down. Engage on all fronts. Scout one Invictor into the ruin, mirroring the forward Scarab Occult Terminators, and the other one I send forward. I want to see if I can get to Alex's face turn 1 and potentially pop those Zangors. But after rolling a 1 on the advance, I decide not to pull the trigger. Instead, I just eke over the center line for engage. Because of the Invictor barreling towards his deployment zone and the need to get something in the middle for establish, Alex doesn't push aggressively into my face and instead holds back. He easily deals with the scouts on the left objective with some rubrics, but otherwise plays relatively safe, trying to ensure he keeps his backline screened because of my potential to drop Inceptors or a Shrike Bomb into his deployment zone. This means this second unit of Scarab Occult Terminators is confined to the backline. That means I can start causing some real problems. On my turn 2, I draw Assassination, and I've never gotten rid of a card so quickly because to get that, I would need to either kill his Terminator Sorcerer, or a Terminator Sorcerer, all of which are not visible and surrounded by 10 Scarab Occult Terminators. Put that card directly into the bloody bin. Instead, I get overwhelming force and no prisoners. I drop down my Inceptors to clear the Rubric squad on the left-hand side, and I string my JPIs out so I have at least 2 OC on this objective and have my backline well screened. My second squad of JPIs moves over to be just over an inch from the ruin that the forward Scarab Occults are in, meaning that if they want to move towards me, they can no longer just go through the wall, especially when I also park my Combi Lieutenant on the middle to also move block. I also move my Invictor onto the objective to add additional OC. My other Invictor surges forwards and gets rid of these angles nice and quickly. Unfortunately, it doesn't manage to get a charge off, which would have been nice to tie some stuff up, but it's done its job, and it's still a nasty Flamer Overwatch threat for anything in his backline. A big mistake I made here, though, was being too passive with my Blade Guard. I only towed 2 OC onto this right objective. I could have easily pushed my whole squad onto here. It made no sense not to do it, and it made it too easy for Alex to run some Spawn or Bow Goats to block my primary. On his turn 2, he moves the center Scarab Occults forward, forcing the reactive move from the Combi Lieutenant. He deletes the blocking JPIs, and then manages to charge into the Combi Lieutenant and the Invictor. On the left side, the second squad of JPIs is very easily destroyed, and the Scarab Occults march forward to properly take hold of that objective. The third squad of Scarab Occults in the deployment zone very easily deal with that Invictor, but that's nearly 500 points of Scarab Occults killing 125 points of Invictor, and he's still stuck in his deployment zone. Battle round 3, and I'm now able to properly pounce. Scouts get into his deployment zone for established locus, and the Blade Guard make extremely quick work of the spawn, and then pile into the Bow Goats. A combination of Centurions, the Invictor, and Sharn delete the entire Scarab Occult squad in the center, and my Vanguard veterans do one final screening wave to ensure that Alex's remaining reserve units must be deployed away from me. This was enough to really restrict the choices Alex could do on turn 3, and his dice also started to really fall apart. He fails to kill all of my scouts, allowing me to pick up the final guy at the end of his turn, and he couldn't even do enough to get full secure No Man's Land. He did kill Sharn with a Doombot though. That was just rude. Honestly, though, he really should have got secure No Man's Land. He wanted to use Temporal Surge on this set of rubrics, but he rolls a double 1 for the ritual. He pushes the roll, which means he's going to take some damage, but the power does go off. As long as he gets at least a 2 on this D6-inch movement, he'll be able to get at least 2 rubrics on there and take the objective. Oh dear. Turn 4, I close in, taking out the Rubrics and the Terminator Sorcerer, and crowning the entrance to the central objective with my Invictor. Alex responds with the SOTs that were in his deployment zone finally coming out to play and taking that objective back. But it's in direct lines of my Centurions, which, on my final turn, basically destroy all of them. My Blade Guard were killed in these turns, and there are now 2 Chaos Spawn trying to reach the right side objective. On my turn 5, the Vanguard veterans somehow failed to kill all the Spawn with Inferno Pistols, so in order to get rid of the threat and secure the center, I had to split charge both the Chaos Spawn and the Terminator Sorcerer. Shrike went into the Terminator Sorcerer and basically did it by himself, but I left the spawn on a single wound. This leads us to Alex's final turn. And remember, he scores primary at the end of this turn. Things aren't looking great, but there is still a fully operational Scarab Occult unit and 2 spawn units that can try and do the work of bringing this game around. Assassination and Marked for Death. I have 5 units left. A Shrike Bomb, my Dev Sense, a single Scout, 2 Intercessors, and a Judicia. I mark up the Centurions and the 2 units that Alex cannot get a line of sight on. Alex redraws Mark for Death and gets Cleanse, which is better because there are now options from this position that Alex can get a win. Currently, it's 75-54. Alex needs 22 points to win here. And if he can get on all 3 objectives in the middle, kill the Judicia, and do a single Cleanse, he wins. Or kill the Judicia, get on 2 objectives, and cleanse them both. First course of action is the engaged Chaos Spawn. It must do a Desperate Escape check to get through the Vanguard Veteran blockade. If he fails this roll, it's game over. He passes and moves the spawn onto the right side objective. I have a command point to reactive move 6 inches. If I can block that, I win. But Alex places his spawn extremely smartly, and I cannot move my Vanguard veterans in a way that gets 2 of them onto the objective out of engagement range of the spawn and still in coherency, and also stringing out to block the other squad of spawn from taking the center, because if they get to center, they could cleanse that, and that's another path to win. I still do the reactive move, but I fully shove the Vanguard veterans towards the center to really make sure that there isn't a chance for the spawn to reach it. The Scarab Occult unit could kill the Shrike Bomb very easily, but to get into range means coming off of the objective they're standing on, and the spawn wouldn't be able to chew through the whole squad either, and even if they did, shooting or fighting means no cleanse. We talked through all the potential options, but unfortunately Alex has to settle for his current position. The Scarab Occults on the left hold that objective and cleanse it. The spawn on the right takes that objective but cannot cleanse because it fell back, and the middle is safe. 20 points on the final turn, giving me a final victory of 75-74. Also, turns out this is one of my hardest matchups.
What won you that game was that your opponent was reacting to you. That is literally the entire reason, because that is a terrible matchup for you as well. That should be one where he just nukes you. If he executes his game plan of just, I walk forward with Scarab Occult Terminators, they advance onto these objectives, done. Like that is just game. But because you got him reacting to you, and because you executed your game plan more efficiently, that is what won you that game. Yeah, it was close still, but that's because it was a horrendous matchup. You can put that one down to purely outplaying the opponent, which is great. You know, well done on that. It's a massive win to already be going, oh, I executed my plan, opponent started reacting, I won.
But this was just the training for the main event, the Birmingham Open at the UK Game Expo. 8 games for my final 10th edition tournament, and one last attempt for this edition to prove that Paul is not bad at stuff. So join me in the next video for the finale of 10th edition, which will probably come out well after 11th edition has been released, making it completely redundant, but it'll still be at least entertaining. Right? Thank you again to Toby for helping me attempt to improve at this game. You can find him at TacticalRock40k here on YouTube and other social media. And as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. Or if you want to support me financially, you can become a member or patron like all of these lovely people right here. I also have merch. Buy it. That's the end of the video. But I know some people might be listening to this whilst doing chores like mowing the garden or doing some painting. So if that's you and you can't easily stop the video to find something else, then I hope you're doing all right. There might also be some people who fall asleep to my videos. And if that's you, then wake the fuck up!